Well, hello, and welcome to another shrink-wrapped book review. I'm your host, Jonathan Jaha Lee, a child and adolescent psychiatrist, and in this series, I review a lot of the books that the people that I work with recommend, and also that colleagues have recommended to me in the past, or books that are of particular interest to me at a particular point in time. Now, today's book I actually finished on my flight from LAX to Toronto Pearson, and it is called Without Conscience by Robert Hare, The Disturbing World of the Psychopaths Among Us. Now, Robert Hare is a clinical psychologist and researcher in Vancouver, BC. So another part of Canada, the faraway foreign land of Canada that I'm from. Vancouver is sort of like the rival sister of Toronto. We're obviously better, but honestly, the sunshine and the beaches and the mountains in Vancouver are pretty sweet. Robert Hare is a world-renowned expert on psychopathy. He developed, a validated, reliable instrument called the Psychopathy Checklist to identify those people who belong to the 4% or so of the population that lack a conscience or lack any sense of remorse or some would even say human kind of emotion registration. In the book, he talks a lot about identifying psychopaths among us. Of course, we see them, in federal prisons, the head of Ponzi schemes, white-collar crime. And then, of course, there are those more garden variety sociopaths that are probably at your dinner table or have probably been in your clinic before or in a waiting room next to you that you never really know about because their type of crimes or their types of crime adjacent behavior fly just under the radar, or they're savvy enough and reptilian enough in their strategy to just not be caught. And he talks about the devastating consequences, emotional, financial, social, to the people who get ensnared in the traps that are laid by these slippery folk. One of the really fascinating parts that struck my interest was some research that he reviewed that he had conducted about the emotional valence of certain words and how true psychopaths don't tend to respond in their brain physiology in quite the same way to emotionally laden words like death or hatred. Most of us, if we put us in an fMRI or an EEG and we flash words like fish or brown or table, we'll have a sort of blip in our brain waves as we recognize the words. But when words such as death or hatred are registered consciously, they procure a much larger and more noticeable and characteristic kind of brainwave that says, ding, 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 this is emotionally rich, this is emotionally significant, this means something. And something that Hare talked about was just how his research showed that psychopaths do not have this kind of characteristic predilection to respond to emotional words. In fact, they tend to just sort of respond to hatred and death in exactly the same way that they would respond to book or Tylenol or whatever neutral kind of garden variety word there was. And he goes through kind of the dialectics of, is this nature, is this nurture? Some would say that all psychopathy is the result of, child abuse, neglect, emotional deprivation, and we can really catch these young people early enough that we can change their course, so to speak. And he also argues that there's likely a very strong genetic component, though our understanding of both of these is still quite rudimentary. Perhaps one of the most, clinically or personally significant aspects that he reviewed for me was just this quality of sociopaths and psychopaths in their eyes. And he talks about how people with this quality tend to have soulless or dead looking eyes. That is to say, they can say things like, I love you, or I hate you, or I'm really mad at you, but give nothing away up here. And maybe it's because on some neural level, there's less registration or less emotional, interpretation or synthesis in our motor function or facial expression. Maybe I don't know, there's so many reasons, but that was really interesting to me. Because I think of some of the people that I've known, not only in my practice, but also in my personal life, that I've dined with, that I've befriended, that I've welcomed into my circles. And I think about the chill that I and some of our mutual friends have talked about in retrospect, and think there's probably something to that. Now, the book finishes with a somewhat demoralizing concluding chapter on looking to the future and what we can do, and just how scant the research to date is. And to that end, I really prefer Martha Stout's books, The Psychopath Next Door and Outsmarting the Psychopath Next Door, which I'll probably review in short order as well, as I'm really into sociopathy, psychopathy at this point in my life. But all of that to say, if you're at all working with clinical people, clinical types, if you've ever wondered if someone, that cousin around you that kind of gives you the chills and just has that really deadpan expression, you wonder if he's a robot or an alien, it may well be that they have sociopathy or psychopathy, and perhaps this book will have some wisdom to impart. So until next time, happy reading and love yourself.